Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Today's video is going to be a great one. We're going to be talking about things that we need around the home and in the home, especially when we talk about maybe not having electricity or having energy to provide for these appliances and for everyday items. 10 things that we're going to be using on the farm, in your home, in the backyard, ultimately not having to have electricity to do those. So you need to be stockpiling these tools. You need to be using these items. Not only can they be good for survival situations, they can be good to just have on hand, because you never know when a storm comes, when blackouts come, when brownouts come, you have ways and means to utilize certain tools around the home. So today's video is going to be a good one, and it starts right now. So when we talk about tools and items that we need, we're not only going to talk about some of the ones outside that we're going to be using, but some of the ones inside that we're going to be using in our home. We are so used to using plug-in appliances or things that we just need to be able to utilize when we just crank or turn on. When we get used to that, it's hard to go back to something like a manual tool or a manual instrument or some item that you have to use, and all of a sudden a survival situation comes along, or just simply a disaster or a collapse in the grid or a grid brownout or blackout, or just simply a loss of power for a certain amount of time. We don't need to be sitting ducks and just say, okay, we'll just wait for the power to come on. Also, we don't want to just rely on our generators and our solar batteries and our battery backups just to do some simple task that we could possibly do just with these hand and manual tools that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to jump right into it. Not only can they get you by, they can be great to have for a survival situation. So let's jump right into it. So number one is going to be simple garden tools. Now on my number one, I'm actually going to say a scythe. I need a scythe because ultimately when we have animals, we need not only the grass that they're grazing now, we need winter feed. So it allows us to know that that's getting taken care of. Now for you, it may not be a scythe. It may be, you know, a shovel or a rake like we have sitting right beside me for our gardens. Garden implements or garden tools doesn't necessarily need to be plugged in or gas powered. You need to have those items. Now for us, we're going to do our hay hopefully with our tractor always, or if it's bigger stuff, we're contracting that out. But in a case where I need to cut tall grass to make a hay, to bale it myself, in a situation where gas or diesel may not be able to be gotten, or we're in a situation where people are in panic because the grid is down, we need to be able to still feed our animals, because ultimately they feed us. So number one for me would be a garden tool or a garden implement. I would say a scythe or a shovel or rake. Our goal is to always take care of our family, so we're going to have to keep on planning. If you're using a tiller or you're mending the ground in some way, you need to learn to have some gardens like that. We have big gardens, and we do a lot of those with some of the implements on a tractor or tiller. However, we have what we call back to Eden style gardens, like the ones that we're standing here right all the way around, and even in our raised beds here, that we've learned to not use tools other than our manual tools or our manual hands to do those things, because ultimately if we have to fall back on these and we can't grow our big gardens because of sizing or because of seed or because of the craziness in our world, the ways and means to grow the garden still. So garden implements would be number one, making sure you have your needs. That would be specifically on you. If you're doing raised beds, you may not need bigger hand tools. You may need the smaller shovels, the smaller forks, the smaller rakes. For people like me, you may need scythes, you may need hay forks, you may need bigger shovels. I want to also caution you, find older tools, because older garden implement tools are going to be better than some of the stuff that we're buying at supermarket stores now. If you can go to a garage store or a secondhand shop, pretty much if you can pick up a rake or shovel from them, you're going to buy a higher quality tool with true metal and iron on it versus some of this plexiglass stuff and some of this cast metal that we're buying today. If you're buying cast metal and some of the newer stuff with fiberglass or cheaper wood handles, you may want to pick up a few extra. There's nothing wrong with having what you need to make sure you can grow and take care of the animals and also you in your gardens. Number two would be a saw, a manual saw, or manual tools such as a hammer, an auger, anything like that that is a manual tool, almost like the garden side with the shovels and scythes and rakes, you need to make sure that it is formulated to what you need in your specifications on what tools mean for you. For us, we depend on firewood. We depend on, you know, smoking our food and charbroiling our food and curing our meats out. So our smokehouse needs a lot of wood too. So for us, a saw or some kind of ways to cut trees is key. I'm used to using a chainsaw. I like a chainsaw. I hope I never don't have a chainsaw. But if you're using a plug-in chainsaw or a gas-powered chainsaw, after time and without certain things, that chainsaw may not work. So look at a saw, maybe look at multiple other tools that you can do outside labor with that can provide you with firewood or with just simple necessities of fixing a shed. So number one is garden tools. Number two is maintenance and regular tools for all the other cases of getting things repaired, fixed, done, or heating your home. Very, very important. Saws can be picked up pretty cheaply, especially manual saws, because nobody wants to use them, but they can be a lifesaver. Number 3 and 4 go together. So number 3 first would be a DIY or a manual washing machine. Now ours, I'm gonna show you a picture of the one we've got. Now I love this thing. It has its mesh, it has its breather, so you're using a plunger handle and it does everything you need to do. I'll link this in our description so you can see the one we have. However, say you don't want to buy anything. I'll tell you the easiest way to make a do-it-yourself wash machine. You take a 5-gallon bucket, you get the top that comes with it, you put a plunger in it, you cut a little hole in the very tip top. So maybe you have a 5-gallon bucket here, put the top on it, cut a simple hole for the plunger to go into, and you literally take a toilet plunger and you work it in and out of the water, soap, and clothes that you have in the bucket. So number 3 would be that wash machine, do-it-yourself washer, and making sure you can manually wash your clothes. Hygiene is so key when we talk about a situation where we may not have power for a long time. Maybe we have power and it's just a storm tree has gotten it out for a few days. To have clothes, especially for a family like ours that's got 8 people, is very, very important. Also, we work on a farm, so therefore when I'm in milk and we're milking our cows, we have a lot of dairy rags that we have to wash. We have a lot of other supplies that need to be cleaned because we're in the mud, the grip, and grime all the time. So having a do-it-yourself wash machine or having this little manual wash machine that we have is key. 4 that goes along with that is going to be a clothesline. Now we have the old school clothesline, 25 foot apart, 4 lines going down it to make sure we can hang as much clothes as we want. Say you don't have that space for a true clothesline, that's okay. They sell like an upside down umbrella style clothesline too that basically fits in any little backyard that you would need to utilize it for. If you learn to be conservative on your washing and drying, not only would you save major energy price and utility charges that you're getting, because the washer and dryer are pulling a ton of power and energy to run, especially for, again, a family like our size. But it brings back a nostalgia. I always enjoy hanging things on the line. If you can and you've got the weather for it, you need to be hand washing, but also be able to hang on your own line. So number 3 and 4 will go hand in hand. It's also good chores for the children to enjoy and understand the value of not changing clothes 6 times a day. Number 5 we're going to talk about, and then we're going to kind of maneuver some of the things that kind of go work in and out. But number 5 would be a rocket stove. Now we talked a little bit in the last video about a grill or a smoker, and we're going to go in depth with a winter cooking and off-grid cooking video very, very soon. But I want to bring a rocket stove to your attention. Now we have 2 forms of rocket stoves. One's a very small one that we put in our bug out bag. It is completely collapsible. The secondary one is like any one that you would see. People build out of tubing or brick. Ours is just a little steel contraption. I'll show it to you right here. And it works, it does everything you need to do. Now, the bigger rocket stove you have, the better, because ultimately you can put more wood in it and it will keep it ginning and going a little bit longer. You can control the heat a little bit better. But in a situation where you're always having to move out, you have to take it out, put it back inside, if you're bugging out, or you're in a situation where you don't know really where you're going, having a smaller one like the one we have is great. You just have to feed it with twigs, so you're constantly putting wood in. However, it is a way to heat water, boil water, cook food. It is key to having a way to cook the food. Now, like we said in the last video, if you're in a situation where you're living indoors, a rocket stove may not be for you, but they do make different styles that worked off of battery power and just a simple plug for a smaller generator. Or I would go back to the Bunsen burner propane. Now that's not what this video is about, using some of the other alternative energies, but in a case where you're indoors, a rocket stove would not be what I would use unless you have a very good brick floor that it won't hurt, or a way that you can get the smoke out of there. So a rocket stove would be number 5 for us, making sure you have a way to heat water, cook, and boil whatever you need, and utilize it even for heat if you had to. Now when I make these videos, I don't put them in particular order. So when I do the 1 through 10s or the 20s or the 5s, please understand I'm not putting these in particular order. I'm just saying to check your list and make sure you have a lot of these things on these 2x-nows or 2 fixed nows, or the instruments you may need in a situation where you are in a survival prep situation, bug in, bug out, or just simply don't have the grid for a certain amount of time. All these things also can be used to conserve energy or to help your expenditures to not spend as much on your energy bills per month. Energy has gone up crazily over the last few weeks and months, and will go up more in the winter. So some of these things may be ways that you can just say, you know what, I just want to save money. I want to conserve energy a little bit better to save me some funds per month. So some of these options will be perfect for you. So let's jump right into number 6, and we're gonna move a little bit more indoors. Number 6 would simply be a meat grinder or meat stuffer. Now, we have an electric version of a meat stuffer and a meat grinder to do our sausages and ground meat. However, in a situation where you can't use that, we also have hand grinders. So we have a hand meat grinder that's going to be a lot slower, and then a hand stuffer for sausages to turn around and smoke and cure in our smokehouse. But I would say you need a way to make your meat smaller. We're good at maybe being a hunter-gatherer and bringing food in. We may be great in having a kill on the farm or hunting and having a big piece of meat that we have to do something with. A lot of times we need to realize that we need to get that meat in smaller portions to be able to then conserve it, to can it, to cook it, and not use as much energy to cook it. If we're talking a roast that's, 6 to 7 inches wide, 6 to 7 inches deep, or we're talking about this big monster steak, that's all good and all when you want to cook it and slow cook it and use a lot of energy to do that. But in a situation where we're trying to conserve, grinding a lot of that meat up, getting it in finer, smaller, coarser meat, it allows you to cook it real quick and have food for your family. It also allows it to go a little bit longer. There's other ways you can use it. You can make it in survival food, and we're going to be talking about some ways that we build true old-fashioned survival food in another video. But having a way to grind the meat up to a smaller case, it allows you to know that you can cook it quicker, conserve it, and then do whatever you need to do with it. Smaller chunks of meat is a lot easier to work with than bigger chunks of meat, and having a meat grinder, meat stuffer is key. And number 7, going along with that, would be a mandolin slicer. Now this is a vegetable mandolin slicer. So again, making smaller portions. If you're doing a baked potato, that's going to take a lot of energy or a lot of time to cook on a grill or on a fire surface or in an oven. If you're trying to conserve, you're not wanting to use your battery bank, you're not wanting to turn on your stove or your little microwave or whatever you're cooking with, it allows you to then get those potatoes in a more scallop style form or julienne to where you can cook them quicker and faster. Our purpose is knowing we're using manual tools means the process is going to take longer. So then we want to conserve on the other end. So let's conserve on the cooking time. If you're doing any kind of cooking and you're making that portion smaller, it is key. So look into a mandolin slicer. Very good for bigger items such as your potato squashes and cucumbers and all that good stuff. You can use them for mincing anything like onions, garlics, and tomatoes too. So look at a mandolin slicer. Very good to have around the house to mince up smaller portions to cook quicker is key. Number 8 would be a mortar and pestle. Now there are different versions of this, but the reason I want to bring up the old mortar and pestle, say you are an herb grower and you like to grow your herbs, not only for eating and for seasoning, but for medicinal purposes, for building tinctures, for dehydrating, whatever you're doing with your herbs, having a mortar and pestle is key. It helps you break that down in a finer way. Same way with your peppers or your salts. It allows you to grind those things or mince those things to make them a little bit easier to store for whatever you're doing with. Now there's different forms. There's been different companies come out and they've made the little grinders that are pretty much almost like one of those salt and pepper shakers that has their little grinders on them. They make those too. So I'm not saying just a simple mortar and pestle. If you don't want to buy a mortar and pestle, that's okay. Look at a way that you can grind herbs and peppers and salts manually. So you may want to take one of those salt and pepper grinders, or they make little herb grinders the same way, as long as it allows you to take the top off, put more stuff in, and break it down basically. If we dehydrate, you know, basil or rosemary, or if we're doing something more medicinal like the flowers like echinacea or calendula, all those things need to be minced up and broken down a little bit more after we dehydrate them. I don't want to have these big leaves, you know, hanging around in a Ziploc bag. I'd rather mince them up and put them in little glass jars, or ways that we can carry them or utilize them across our home, or maybe putting them in our bags. If you're foraging, same way. The things that you're foraging and bringing back after you dehydrate, it's good to be able to break those things down. A mortar and pestle is key, or some kind of little herb grinder would be definitely good to have. Number 9 would be a hand crank mixer or hand crank blender. We saw these because a lot of people used to, you know, kind of make or whisk eggs with them, or whisk cream with them. It's just good to have. Say you're making a dough. Say you're making something with an egg base. You need to be able to mix those things in. Having a hand blender is key. For number 10, I'm actually going to kind of throw 2 things together. I'm going to say anything like a hand crank flour mill or coffee mill. We grind a lot of our coffee beans. I like that. It just tastes better and smells better, and I'm not a coffee snob. I just enjoy it that way. I like the whole beans and be able to grind it myself. Now, if you're buying ground coffee, no big deal. But say you're not. Same way when it comes to our flour. If you're growing millet, or you're growing rye, or you're growing, you know, wheat berries, to have that to be able to grind and make your own flour is key. The reason I'm bringing this one up, and the reason I'm bringing up the coffee, when we talked about pandemic times, we saw people kind of leave the shelves with sugar and flour. It always does, and toilet paper for some reason. But sugar and flour just kind of left from there. People don't realize that you can go to the co-ops or feed stores and buy whole corn, or you can have wheat berries, or you can have millet or rye. You can buy those seeds in the whole kernel form that you can plant or you can eat. Make sure you're buying the edible kind. It's not some kind of like deer corn. It's a good quality grain. But you can buy those grains in a whole form and grind them up yourself, and pretty much it's not in short supply like it is when it comes to like enriched flour that you buy at Walmart. So have a hand grinder for things like corn, for wheat berries, for any other grains that you're buying. The point is not always saying I'm going to go and I'm going to buy a big pack of wheat berries instead of flour. It's just to say if we're in a survival situation or prep situation and we're running out of flour, that's the thing that tends to leave the shelves quicker, just like canned goods or toilet paper or sugar. By having a way that we can run to a co-op, or we can buy from a feed store, or that we're growing ourselves, we're growing wheat or field corn or millet, it allows us to have another form of grain to be able to then grind up and make our own flour or our own coarse grain to then add it to whatever we're needing. Our goal is to simplify our meals by mincing our garlics and our onions, by mandolining and julienning our potatoes and our onions, and also by grinding our meats down. Same form and fashion about grinding our grains down. We're now being able to take our food from big to small, conserve the energy to cook it, even on the rocket stove that we talked about. The whole purpose is to get those calories down with less work to do something with the food. If we can process this food and get this food smaller, it allows us to cook it quicker, conserve the energy, and get it in our system as quick as possible. We know if you've stayed to the end of this video, we believe that you like the content. So we hope that you'll go back and check out some of these other videos on the screen here, and hopefully you will enjoy binge watching our channel. Thank you again. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.